Here's something kind of cool. I hate to call this an antique, but as fast as Apple Computer moves these days, I guess it would almost qualify. This is a Macintosh PowerBook G3 Wallstreet model, and in the time that has passed since this thing was made, Apple Computer has moved so fast and changed so many things, even their company name, and I know that these days it's Apple Incorporated, but old habits do die hard. This is something that my dad was actually given by some coworkers of his or people that he knows or something, and you certainly wouldn't see Apple making a thing like this today. In fact, you compare a halfway modern Apple product to this, and you can see that a lot has changed over time. Not as many ports and gewgaws on the newer machine. And of course the power connector has changed. You know, here we have the MagSafe connector, and this is actually kind of a hybridized female RCA plug and a mini jack connector. This is actually a connector that Apple used for a very long time. My PowerBook Duo 270C has a similar connector, and although I haven't checked, I would not be surprised to learn that the operating voltages are the same. I don't know that they are, but I can't say that they're not because, like I say, I haven't checked it. But it wouldn't surprise me if the power supply from this machine would work on the PowerBook Duo 270. Probably wouldn't work the other way around because I would imagine this machine has higher current draw figures. But there's all kinds of ports on this thing, from Apple Desktop Bus, Apple Serial, Ethernet. I don't think Airport was offered on these, but I could be wrong. I haven't checked that either. Got an S-Video output, VGA 15-pin, kind of surprising. I thought this might have the Apple monitor connector on it, and of course a SCSI connection, which is this oddball 30-pin job right here. And then over here, honest-to-goodness expansion slots, dual card bus slots on this thing, and a plain old analog telephone modem. Don't know how fast that would go, but you certainly don't see that on a modern Apple computer anymore. Perhaps amazingly enough, the battery on this thing is still quite good. I don't know that this is the original battery. I couldn't imagine that it is, but then again, knowing what I know about the people who own this, nothing would surprise me, because I don't think they exactly treated it to a lot of new parts during its lifetime. And of course there's this latch on the front which holds it quite securely. Actually pivot this out. That's changed. Apple uses magnets these days. So you can open that up right there, and then you can open this thing up. And of course up here, sign of a bygone era, it says Power PC. Not only would it not say that these days because of the Intel processors, but there would probably also be a webcam up there. I would guess that's a 12, 13-inch active matrix color display panel, somewhere in there. Macintosh PowerBook G3, and of course an Apple logo that was much cooler than the one they have now, with a rainbow on it. Two very nice speakers built into this thing, a set of volume and brightness controls, actual separate hardware buttons, and a decently sized, reasonable key travel keyboard. This thing's actually not too bad to type on. Touchpad down here. Let's go ahead and power this thing up. You know what I'm going to do? First thing I'm going to do, I still have my work clothes on, so I'm going to change those because I can't stand them, to be perfectly honest. So let me slip into something a little more comfortable, and I'll continue on this little tour of this wonderful machine. Okay, and I'm back, and better than ever before, at least as good as I get, which is usually pretty marginal at best. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you that this thing works perfectly. It doesn't. It has a little bit of character in the form of the display. When I've been using this thing, and that's how I know the battery's good, although it seems that a week or two's worth of sitting around my bedroom waiting for me to make this video ran it down. So I actually had to go and get the power adapter there, which I probably shouldn't have on my bed because it does get hot. This thing does have some character in the display department. It draws some things with red fringing around the edges. It almost looks like a video memory problem. I'm not sure if the video processor itself is bad, if there's a problem between the interconnecting cable between the logic board and the display. I haven't tried an external monitor to see if this thing behaves any better, but it definitely does have some character in the video subsystem. Still, it's not so bad as to be unusable, so let's go ahead and power this thing on here and see what happens. Now, if I had a good stereo microphone on my wonderful Panasonic Lumix camera, I suppose that you would hear that the Macintosh sound as played by this machine, which has changed very little between now and the present day, is actually has a pretty wide stereo separation effect that doesn't seem to be present on those machines. It does take these things a while to power up. So if you find one and turn it on, it makes the Macintosh sound. It will come on eventually. You just might have to give it a few minutes. Uh-oh. What's that? Well, it wasn't quite that bad. That looks rather artistic, actually. It's very interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure where the display trouble on this machine lies, but it's clearly got it, because that's not what that ought to look like at all, and it certainly shouldn't be appearing at two places on the screen. So something is definitely screwed up, because I have two mouse pointers. That's very clever. So much for having a demonstration of this machine. I'm not sure how well that's going to play out. You know, the classic charm of the good old classic Mac OS is something that I kind of miss in Mac OS X. Now, that's not to say I miss the rest of the operating system. I'm not going to lie. When I first started my job, where I work, they are basically exclusively a Macintosh shop. More artsiness there. They are exclusively a Macintosh shop, and everybody except me was on Mac OS 9. Keep in mind this was in 2003 when I got the job I have now. And I had a Windows NT workstation machine, an early Pentium 4 from about 2001. And I am sorry to say that I had the most reliable machine in the building. I could actually go for days without rebooting, and that wasn't something that the rest of my coworkers with their Power PCs and Power Macintosh G3s could do. But I do miss the kind of simple look and feel, and I would say that the early releases of the classic Mac OS were not bad at all. It's just that as time went on, it didn't really keep up well with the times, and that's another thing that makes this machine kind of an antique. Now I've got just one mouse pointer, which is closer, but the little tab strip down there is messed up, and so are the icons. They've got interesting jitters. They got the acid shivers or something. Anyway, the classic Mac OS, you know, it has that kind of old-time charm, that simple, friendly look and feel, but unfortunately it just didn't age well, and so Mac OS X was definitely a welcome relief, although it took them a few releases to get it right. I guess I'll see what I can do on this machine, what I can demonstrate, what it'll, oh gee whiz, yeah, it is really messed up. I'm not sure what happened. It was working, but I guess it's not working now. And I'm not sure exactly where the trouble lies, so I guess that's about as far as I'm going to be able to take this little video demonstration. I was hoping to show you some things on Mac OS 9 for those of you who have never seen it, or those of you who haven't seen it in some time. It's actually been long enough since I used this that I'd forgotten how to do some things, so that was definitely a switch. But I'll tell you right now, the software situation, Mac OS 9 has basically been forgotten. It has been left in the dust. And while there's a lot of great Mac OS, classic Mac OS software still out there today, unfortunately one place that the classic Macintosh operating system is definitely lacking is in a web browser. There just aren't a whole lot of choices. The one halfway current choice that was the only thing you could do for the longest time was actually known as iCab. And it wasn't a bad little browser, but it couldn't do everything. And of course, the state of plugins, you know, there's no modern flash player for the classic Mac OS or anything like this. But someone revived an old port of a piece of software known as Webcam, Web and Mail Communicator, I think is what that was an acronym for. And they have decided to update it and include security patches and a more modern rendering engine and things like that. It was actually a port of the old Mozilla Communicator suite, which Mozilla stopped development on, and then the guy who did Webcam, he did a couple different releases, and then he dropped off and quit doing those things. But now it's been resurrected again, and it's known as Classilla. And if you are into the classic Macintosh operating system or retro computing in general, you should definitely do what you can to support them, because they could certainly use the support and use the users. The same is true of iCab. So I can't really show you much on this thing because obviously the display is pretty screwed up. But this is just a quick look at the classic Macintosh operating system and how it differs from Mac OS X. A very quick glance. I mean, this is not even a proper walkthrough of the concepts. But one place that they definitely differ, Mac OS X is preemptively multitasked, and the operating system's kernel maintains control of the system at all times, whereas Mac OS 9 and prior were cooperatively tasked, and so a program could run off with the if you imagine an operating system as a bunch of kids playing a game of kickball, that would be a good way to imagine it. You know, one person has the kickball at any given time, and if that person runs off with it, then everybody else is left kind of hanging there. So there you have it, kind of a whirlwind demonstration of a Macintosh PowerBook G3 with some display problems. I don't know that I'm going to go to a whole lot of trouble to investigate this. In fact, I'll probably be listing this thing on eBay for parts, because I'm not sure that anything other than a new logic board or video card, if it has a separate video card, would actually fix it. But it is kind of a cool machine in its own right, and it shows you how far we've come over the past roughly decade in terms of Apple technology. So there you have it. Thank you for watching.